The third pivotal experience that I've had that really shaped who I am is becoming a wife and a mother. So my mom and my biological father separated when I was 2. And my mom started dating my stepdad, who I now affectionately refer to as my dad. It's no stepdad, that's my dad. But for the sake of the story, to make the distinction, I said stepdad. I remember him telling me when he first met me and my brother. I was 2. He walked in and it was paper all over the floor. And he said, I opened the door and I was looking around and I said, "You guys clean this paper up." He said, "Both of y'all stopped." He said, "You looked at me like, well, who are you?" And he said, I said to you guys, "Y'all clean this paper up. You got all this paper on the floor. Your mom's not going to be happy about this." And he said, at 2, I might have been 2.5, I walked over to him and I said, "Well, why do I have to clean up the paper when he was throwing it at me?" And he said, I was really taken back by that. He said, because I'm like, who is this little girl? Again, she's only like 2.5 years old, and her ability to reason and her logic, he was like, I really felt like, let me pay attention to this a little bit more. He said, I still made you clean it up, but that made me pay attention to who you are. And, from that point on, he said, I would always have these mini adult conversations, or I would write these short stories. And he said it was always, a kid's story, but what I always noticed was it always had a beginning, a middle, and an end. He said, so you've always been a really good storyteller. And, up till now, my dad and I, we still have these, we call them kitchen table conversations. And I never really understood, and sometimes I feel like I still am learning, what it takes to be a good parent. I grew up in a big family. My grandmother had 11 kids, so I have something like 40 plus first cousins, and we're all pretty close. So I always knew like I wanted to have a family. That experience coupled with, you can feel however you want about Bill Cosby, but Heathcliff Huxtable really shaped my life. It was a big influence. So much so that, from the time I was 9 till I went to college, I said I was going to be a doctor. I was going to be an obstetrician gynecologist. I was a pre-med student, did all the bio. I was in until I got to organic chemistry. And then that was the one that was like, well, maybe I'm not going to, But just the family dynamic of that show made me feel like that's what I want. I want that. I knew my husband since I was 16 years old. We were working at Sears on Route 22 together. And he was always really nice, really sweet. And we only got like 30 minutes for lunch. And there was this little like luncheonette place in there. So he would always come up and ask if he could, have lunch with me. And by the time we ordered the food, waited for it to be made, sat down and ate, we was running out of there with like 5 minutes to spare. So we never really had that much time. So, we would see each other at work and talk, and, he was cool. And then I went to high school. I went to a separate high school than the town that I lived in where he went. So we kind of lost touch. And I graduated and went to college. And I was friends with this guy, and he came to see me. We were just friends. he started liking my neighbor. So he wanted to continue to come over, and he was like, I'm going to come over and I'm going to bring my cousin. And I'm like, I don't know about that. He's like, no, he's cool. So I lived in a 4-apartment duplex. So I was like, all right, bring him when you come see my friend, who's my neighbor, and I'll just go to her house. And he wasn't going to know that I lived next door on the other side. And when he comes, he brings his cousin, and I'm like, I know him. My husband's name is Brian. So I'm like, I know Brian. And so, we're cool. We're hanging out. I'm beating him in the Wii bowling because, it was just a fun time. And, then again, he was kind of like, I like you. At that time, I was, sometimes women can do. My husband, he's not a flashy guy. Very nice, not flashy. And, at that point, I'm in college and I think I'm with the guy that's flashy and, all of that. So I'm like, oh, he's nice, but we could just be friends. So again, we kind of lost contact. And then, so I'm living my life, I'm traveling. And at some point, I would see like when I would travel, I would post like, about my excursions, and he would, like it. He wouldn't comment too much, but he would just be liking my stuff. So, I'm scrolling through Facebook and I see his picture and I'm like, Brian looking kind of cute. Let me see what's going on with Brian. So, I send him a message like, hey, what's going on? It would be really good to catch up. How are you? And he's like, oh, I'm so happy you text me, and I would love to get together and have lunch. And then he was like, how about I do one better? How about I make you breakfast? And I was like, I like to eat breakfast. And he was like, okay. So he was like, I'll go to the supermarket and I'll grab a couple things and, I'll come over for breakfast. So I'm like, all right, cool. And so we had made plans for him to come the next day. So I'm thinking he's going to come like 10, 11. It'll be like a brunch type thing. So I get a call at like 7 o'clock in the morning. And it's Brian. So I'm like, hey, how you doing? I'm thinking, he's calling to say, ask me, is there anything in particular that you want? I'm getting ready to make a store run. He's like, hey, you still want that breakfast in bed, right? I'm like, yeah, of course. He's like, all right, good. I'm downstairs. I'm like, oh my God. So now I'm trying to like not be overdone, but I'm like trying to hurry up and brush my teeth and fix my hair a little bit, put something on, but I don't want to look like I planned too much. And he made this amazing breakfast. I had breakfast in bed and we just hung out. And I remember him saying, like, I feel like I messed up the opportunity before, but I'm not going to do it again. And so I'm like, okay, whatever. I don't really know ring on my finger, but I hear you talking. He's like, okay, I'll show you. And, still the same sweet guy that I remember. And I remember it was Christmas. And, that's when the mannequin challenge where everybody would stop and the camera would pan across and people would be frozen like mannequins. We're at my aunt's house and I should have known something was up because my parents were there. And normally if my parents are not going to church, they're not going anywhere for New Year's, and they were out. And I had attributed that to the fact that my dad had 2 illnesses. I'll just say he had 2 aneurysms, but that'll be for another story. And perhaps just, with all of that, he wanted to be out and around his family. So I'm like, all right, cool. So it's my aunt, my uncle, my mom, my dad, me, Brian, and my cousin and his wife. And, they're rushing back because they went to go drop the kids off. They're rushing back. Wait for us to do the mannequin challenge. And so they come back and we're doing it. And the first time I stop and I'm looking at my aunt and I just bust out laughing. So I messed it up. So I'm like, all right, this time we're going to do it over. But this time I'm going to keep my eyes closed so that I don't have to look at anybody and I don't laugh. So we do it again. And, whatever, I stop. And my cousin is like, wait. And I'm hearing shuffling, but I'm thinking that's him moving around to kind of get everybody. So then he's like, all right, open your eyes. And then when I open my eyes, I look and Brian is standing there. Well, he's on his knees with a ring. And I remember kind of just like looking around like, what the heck is happening? You know how like in the movies where it might be like where everything kind of just goes into slow motion or things stop and then it's just the one person that's talking while everything is frozen? That's how it felt like. It felt like time stood still. I could hear the TV and I saw Brian talking. I saw his mouth moving. I cannot tell you a single word that man said. And I just remember looking around like, oh my God, what is this real? And then I heard the last part of marry me. And I'm looking around like, oh my God, what did he say? And I'm looking like, oh my God, that's a ring. Oh my God, that stone is blue just like I wanted. And then I hear my mom say something, girl. And that snapped me out. And I'm like, and everybody shouting and happy. And I'm like, holy crap. I just got engaged. And then I'm thinking, shoot, my hair is not done. My nails look busted. And now I got to take a picture of yeah. So I always knew that marriage is hard work because my parents have been married for now probably 32 years. They've been together for 39. For part of it, I grew up with them, so I saw the hard. And then for the other part, after I went to college and moved, and I missed that part, but then being in a relationship myself, I'm experiencing my own set of hard, if you will. And then couple that with being a mom. I was just having this conversation recently. I think that for myself, I was the only girl and I was the baby. So I never really had to share. And my brothers were older. So it's almost like I grew up like an only child because in my house, my dad, because I was the girl, now I'm talking about my stepdad, but my dad spoiled daddy's girl all over again. So that was my experience. And then, having kids is like, I don't even know if I could really put it into words how different it is. If you have children, then, I think you may be understanding a bit of what I'm saying. But that was like, it was so life changing for me because it's like, what? Now it's not, I'm not on my own time. I'm having to make sacrifices that I didn't even imagine that I would have to make. Because even as a wife, sometimes I have the liberty to say, well, no, dear, I don't want to do that. With children, it's not about what you feel like you want to do. This is what needs to be done. I'm going to share more stories about lessons that I've learned as a wife and as a mother. But I think those two things have really stretched me and forced me to grow and mature in so many ways. There's this vision that I had of how I would be as a wife and a mother. And now that I'm actually sitting in the seat, it's the reality of what it means for me to be a wife and a mother. What I'm learning is that I'll say parenthood is one of the easiest things to get in. And I think so many people do it because it's easy without really understanding all of what it takes. And even for marriage, I will say that parenthood and marriage are those things that you never really understand what it takes to be successful until you're sitting in the seat. And it might be at that point that you're like, I don't know if this is really what I wanted to do, because this is a lot of work. It's more than what I thought it would be. So I really want to share a lot more of those stories just because I've had a lot of revelations, and I feel like now is a good time to give a disclaimer that I talked to my husband about this, so he knows that I'm going to be sharing certain aspects of our marriage and my lived experience. And the final thought would be seeking counsel from wisdom helps you to move further without having to repeat mistakes that others have already made and learned from and can share with you. I've always been really comfortable with learning from others' mistakes rather than making my own, or I'll make new mistakes but not repeat somebody else's. So that has been really helpful in guiding me in how I want to show up as a wife and how I want to also show up as a mom. Both are hard, but I am so appreciative to be blessed to sit in the seat and to be able to learn and to be able to share. If you've enjoyed this episode, please leave a comment. Let me know your thoughts. Don't keep it to yourself. Share it with a friend. And I hope you will return for more.